Just gonna give maybe one more minute, so because I saw quite a few people were interested. Let people filter in. Are the panels being pinged? Because I completely missed Goratrix and Chayez because I didn't get pinged. Interesting. Okay. Oh, I must have completely missed the announcement that said they're not. Okay, cool. Good to know. Oh, I forgot to share my goddamn. I'm good at this. No, I'm not. Okay, how do I do this? I've done this exactly. Let's share. Why can't I share my screen? Oh, it's because we don't have. Oh no. It's because we don't have the better support. No, no, no. It's not because I don't have terms. We don't have the boost here for me to share screen to everybody. How close are we? It's level 2, isn't it? Or is it level 3? Because we're one boost shy of 2 if it's 2. We are missing one boost. Awesome. Thank you so much. Alright, here we go. Is this the correct window? I hope so. Go live. Alright, is this the correct... Alright, I'm just testing to see if... Alright. Ugh. I want to make note of and apologize if any traffic noise comes through my microphone because we have had some people up the road decide to invest in incredibly loud vehicles. And if they drive past my windows open because it's a beautiful day outside and we don't have air conditioning at the back of our house. So, if you hear a loud vehicle, I apologize. If I hear it, I will make a joke about it, but... Alright, let's see. If they're loud, bite them. I will chase them down. Man, I wish I could do that. But alright. Welcome to Therian, Dispelling the Earthen Animal Myth. If you have been at one of my previous presentations of it, it is going to be very similar to what you have experienced before. I am debuting the slideshow variation of the presentation to OtherCon this time. I did get to do this at Centaurus Festival. So if you saw it at Centaurus Festival, it's going to be the exact same one. But because there's always some new people, I like to be able to bring this to you because not everybody has had the chance to see the presentation. The Centaurus Festival is a early spring festival for basically mythologicals. I think it got linked somewhere, but I'm sure Paige will fix that if it's not already. I definitely would highly suggest it. It was a lot of fun. I love that there's more conventions happening. It's wonderful. But let's get started with Therian, Dispelling the Earthen Animal Myth. Introduction. For many individuals in the non-human community today, terminology is learned of by word of mouth from individuals that have resided in the community for longer, and then pass on that knowledge to further newcomers. Such is the way for many communities, but as a method of information transfer, it can contribute to the loss and future lack of information. Such is the case of our beloved word Therian. Today, I'm going to be talking about the evolution of the word from its earliest predecessor, phenotype, to its current meaning of identifying as an earthen animal, and how it obtained this incredibly narrow and exclusatory meaning. My goal and hope is to bring solace and open a new avenue to those who have previously identified with the term, but were told or had assumed they do not fit the definition. Preface. Just as we coin new terms today in order to better convey our understanding of what it is to be alterhuman, so did those in our past. To better understand what influenced the changes of our terms, we must go back to the beginning of our recorded history in order to learn the roots of our terminology. Some quotes may sound oddly worded or tilted in cadence. Many older sources interweave therianthropy with totem animals, which are no longer discussed today within Therian circles. Full quotes can be found within source links, but have no basis on today's topic, and thus have been omitted. Other terms, such as otherkin, are going to be mentioned in reference to how intersectionality has occurred throughout the years, but are not the focus of our gathering today. Some of the sources I will be utilizing must be understood as a product of their time, as our understanding of therianthropy has evolved since the community's first gatherings. Today's topic is not meant to be a commentary or discussion on how the understanding of therianthropy as an identity and experience has evolved. Finally, everything that is going to be talked about today, I was not present in the community to experience firsthand. Instead, this will be an analysis of historical documents, including personal websites and forums, among other community gatherings. I do not speak as a total authority on this subject matter. I am merely bringing to light what, I feel with evidence, was maliciously made to be forgotten. Thus, I welcome anyone who was present in the community during the times I mentioned today to correct any inconsistencies in my information. Our history is incomplete due to the nature of the internet, and I will happily accept any primary sources that alter or clarify the information I have. Alt-horror werewolves. Alt-horror werewolves was a Usenet group in which the Therian community can trace its originating roots to. While it is a name many have heard in passing, it is a product of a very early version of the internet. It's literally as old as me. Its name refers to its original purpose. It was essentially, as we would understand it today, a sub-forum that was dedicated to fans of the horror genre of media, specifically focusing on werewolves. Fans would gather at Alt-Horror Werewolves to discuss werewolf media, but it also attracted a slightly different type of fan. Through the first year of the group's existence, topics would be posted asking about real-life werewolves, some to the tune of claiming to be werewolves. Anyone else who feels the blood of the beast in them? While many users wrote off such topics as role-players, discussions of the nature continued to trickle in numbers, until shortly after the website's first birthday. A thread was posted by the owner of the forum himself, speaking about how his interest in werewolves stemmed from wanting to get back in touch with nature, and with his feelings of animality. This topic opened a sluice gate of further threads on the subject, talking about the nature of man and the buried feelings of the animal inside. A werebat by the name of Ron created a thread speaking about a dream in which he as a werebat was fighting a werewolf, and stated, Sorry, werewolves of the net, it's nothing personal against your phenotype. This is one of, if not the earliest surviving mentions of the term phenotype, and the first umbrella term to be coined in order to discuss other werebeasts that were not wolves. Not long after, however, another thread proposed the term theriomorph, which is the term that alt horror werewolves FAQ would go on to use for years. Yet the words were and were-creature and lycanthrope continued to be the most commonly used terms amongst the community. A year after theriomorph was coined, a were-native creature by the name of James created a topic stating that the continued use of lycanthropy was confusing and asked, anyone besides me heard of the term therianthropy, which is a more general term for lycanthropy? This is the oldest surviving thread on alt horror werewolves that uses the term, and gained many supporters to the point of being adopted as the term we knew today. But as old habits die hard, the origin of our community being rooted in werebeast terminology and aesthetic produced the popular term wereside as an alternative to phenotype, and soon after, the coining of polywere, the predecessor to polytherian. The term shifter referred to Therians of all sorts, but typically focused on those who felt dramatic or mental or phantom shifts, and was a term used well into the 2000s. The term were-mythic was also coined at this time, though it never caught popularity as animals of all sorts had been present and accepted in the community since the beginning. Yes, alt horror werewolves was host to many different types of animals, regardless of wolf in the name. We know this by a surviving practice called werecards. Werecards were user-fillable surveys of information on a were creature, and included a section to self-identify one's stereotype. Notable examples include chimeras, dragons, griffins, unicorns, hybrid creatures of all sorts, tigran, anthro-animals, giants, phoenix, centaur, manticore, and even the infamous were Pontiac. Yes, the make of car. However, alt horror werewolves' reign as the community hub would not last, and members were scattered to new forums and personal websites as one of the first and largest of its time unified trolling events destroyed the forum's usage. But all was not lost, as the members' scatter brought the newly founded community to the internet at large, and kicked off a golden age of discussion, introspection, and awakening. Therianthropy, the Wild Plains. Out in the wild of the internet, were creatures took their lycanthropy-based linguistics and shared it with the non-were creature individuals, who asked the question of why were, and why just wolves? While students of alt horror werewolves members would continue to use were-based linguistics for well over a decade, and in some cases into modern day, such as our current word for shifts, many took Therian and ran into the tall grass. A commonality between non-humans of the time was, ask 10 therianthropes what therianthropy is, and you'll get 11 different answers. Yet a general consensus shows us that those answers were all on the same page. Twilight Fox, in 1998, writes, a phenotype is an integral part of themselves, something which can never be seen as separate from themselves. Therianthrope.org, carrying over from Alt Horror Werewolves FAQ, which was captured on the Internet Archive in 1998, states, Therianthropy is the ability to mentally transform from the normal human mode of thinking and reacting to an animal one. Lynx's Temple in 2000 writes, fundamentally, it means that you in some way perceive yourself as occupying the liminal space between human and wild animal. And in conversation adapted from Alt Horror Werewolves, I prefer the word animality or wereside. I myself don't like the word phenotype, it really is a misnomer. According to Winged Wolf in 2003, the variety of phenotypes is very long and even includes some animals which are thought to be mythical or legendary, such as dragons and native spirits. Korok says in 2004, a therianthrope or were is a person who feels that they have some connection to an animal. They might think they are an animal inside, in mind or spirit, or that are in that they are part animal in this way. The cloven-hooved goddess also in 2004 writes, Therianthropes are people who share an integral connection with an animal in such a way that they believe themselves to be that animal, in either a spiritual, mental, or emotional capacity. And further states, nobody has the right to claim that dragons cannot be therianthropes. It is up to the individual to choose which label to identify themselves as. Aurora Wolfen, again in 2004, states, there are also wares whose phenotype is not of this earth, like dragons and griffins, though some say these are not wares, but otherkin. Aquila, once more in 2004, states, Therianthropy is a constant state of being and way of experiencing or perceiving the world that leads a person to identify as an animal. Mastachina in 2005 states, Therianthropy is the belief that one is, in whole or in part, one or more animals in some manner other than physically, and goes on to qualify this with, Therians are those believing to having an animal soul, sometimes also mythical animals or extinct ones. Quill tells us in 2006, Therianthropy is a state of being in which the therianthrope exists, lives, thinks, has instincts, and often acts as a non-human animal. Niera also in 2006 defines it very simply as therianthropy is animality. Project Shift defines it in the years between 2008 and 2010 as the state of being a person who is, feels, or believes they are in part or whole, non-physically, one or more non-human animals on an integral, personal level. True Form Within in 2009 states, a therianthrope can be any sort of animal, living or extinct, and goes on to qualify it with, over the past couple of years, there has been a huge increase in theriotypes, other than wolves, as well as an increase in those whose phenotype are more astral creatures, such as dragons, elves, phoenix, etc. Moonsong writes, in the years between 2009 and 2011, Therian is any human that identifies with a non-human animal. They could identify with it spiritually, mentally, and sometimes physically. So, where and how did it change? Somewhere around 2006 is where primary sources in the form of cataloged websites begin to wane in frequency. Thus, this is where hard evidence begins to become scarce. We can speculate on why, and my personal theories include the movement of communities from forum-style chat functions to increasingly popular instant messaging formats such as Skype, the loss of internet savviness, and thus the lost knowledge of submitting online information to the Internet Archive, the loss of interest in hosting personal websites, in addition to the loss of hosting services, such as GeoCities and FreeWebs, the closing of once active but later inactive forums, as well as the roiling turmoil of constantly emerging and dying web hosts, such as AOL. In 2002, we see the earliest recorded description that I could find of what Therians are versus otherkin. Glendarry describes otherkin as therianthropes whose bonded creature are mythical beings such as dragons and elves. Otherkin are actually contherianthropes, whereby no mental shifting occurs, but they have a constant feeling of being like their bond entity. Granted, while I did not specifically read into otherkin's history, my research into our term's history finds that it is it intersects at points with Otherkin, going all the way back to alt-horror werewolves to be exact. And this is a very early point of time to encounter this sentiment, which suggests that the quote-unquote argument of Therian's experience other can identify has been going on much longer than previously thought. It also displays an early schism between the mythical and earthen definitions, being the earliest definition I was able to find in which distinctly defines mythical creatures as otherkin. I reached out to Orion Scribner in order to hear from someone who was present in the alter-human community during that time, and they suggested reading the Field Guide to Otherkin by Lupa, as they recalled a shift in definitions around the time she was gathering information to be included in the book. Field Guide was published in late 2007, and one can speculate that it was one, if not more, years in the making, putting the dates of obtained information an estimated 2006 to 2007. Under the definitions section of the book, Lupa defines therianthropy as people who identify as earth-based animals in some respect. She later qualifies this statement with, "There is some debate as to whether therianthropy should be limited only to those who identify as animals native to this plane of existence." She does mention that several surveyed dragons identified as Therians, but this is the extent of her touching on the subject, and yet it's the earliest specified definition I've been able to find that claims Therians are earthen animals only. Considering that the Therian community has always had non-earthen animals within it, it's hard to imagine how a community with such strong roots started to oust established members. Lupa's Field Guide doesn't seem to be the origin of the definition, but it's arguable that it is a cornerstone in its proliferation, due to how well the book encapsulates the community as a whole, and even continues into today, so far as to be recommended as an accurate overview of what it is to be alter-human. An even earlier source than Lupa's Field Guide, and one that had great influence upon her writings, goes by the title of The Magic of Shapeshifting. Released in 2000 and authored by Rosalind Green, the book's contents, of which describe how shapeshifting supposedly works in this world, are controversial at best, and physically impossible and incredibly discouraging at worst. But it's definitely an entertaining, if dangerous, read, and gives us some insight into some of the most interesting, evolving interactions of the Therian community post-alt-horror werewolves. Within her book, Green delves into the physics of how shifters are tied to their species, citing needing access to the energy of the animal in order to assume the correct form. Thus, mythical or fictional animals are impossible forms for shifters to have. However, she does go on to qualify the argument both for earthen animals only, that one would need the energy of the living animal to reference from, and for all species, wherein animals that are nearly extinct or incredibly difficult to find physically, such as the tiger, which is popular in shifters, can be accessed due to the energy from the collective subconscious and its essential structure. With that said, I unfortunately have no definitively sourced knowledge of how the earthen animal only definition came to exist, or why the schism began. I only have speculation. Did Green's The Magic of Shapeshifting touch on a real schism in the Therian community that was latent enough that I couldn't find evidence for? Or was it fabricated but for entertainment? Regardless, it was damning enough for Lupa to include in the Field Guide, a 101 source for many Therians throughout the years. So why did it change in the community's lexicon? Orion gave me their opinion on the matter, and as it's wonderfully succinct, I'll quote them. Therianthropes have always tended to be defensive about trying to be seen as plausible, whether for spiritual or psychological reasons, and a few felt imaginary beings were too implausible. From the sources I've read on the matter, I agree. The few gaped kept the many, and over time it became the only definition. There exists the concept of an online echo chamber. It is a phenomenon in which individuals within a closed community learn about a topic and only discuss amongst themselves, thus prompting all members of the echo chamber to believe they, and only they, have the correct information on the topic. If the echo chamber becomes the primary source of information on a topic, only that information will ever be known by newcomers, as well as those that spread the information beyond the echo chamber's walls. Excuse me. Late in 2008, a burgeoning forum, one of few of its kind at the time, named Therian Wilderness, presented the Earthen animal definition to its members. An admin going by the name of Ray Harakti posted, Therians are a type of otherkin. Otherkin is just kin different to standard animal and men, and Therianthropes are the branch that are referred to as Earth animal humans. Otherkin are everything considered not to be earthly animals. Other admins go on to qualify that it was the definition used in all of the personal sites that they had seen, and it would become the definition used by the forum even up to today, where it can be found in the forum's terms and definition board. Many in attendance may recognize the name of the forum. It was one of the most popular forums for Therians through 2015, but it was also infamous for being somewhat hostile to anyone who wasn't an earthen animal. Messages and threads throughout the years showed otherkin or non-earthen animals, such as dragons joining, being told there's not much here for you, and their introduction post being the last interaction they'd had on the site. Similarly, when individuals argued for non-earthen animals to be able to use Therian, they were shut down in favor of the argument of, this is how it always has been, suck it up. Even when objectively shown the forum was being exclusive or outright ignoring community history. The unyielding nature of the users and the popularity of the forum presented the community with only one option, thus locked new community members into only knowing the exclusive definition, not fostering a community that helped others find language that helped them better understand themselves. I'm a Therian. I'm a genetically modified hybrid dinosaur. I may have been able to pass the mirror test, but I could never have understood the ramifications of being in a natural animal. I was an animal and I still am. I experienced dinosaur drives, dinosaur instincts, the urge to chirp, roar, bite, swim, hunt. How does that make me any different than a lion, than a vulture, than a dolphin? The term Therian was always meant to describe animals, but that was taken from those of us who don't fit a perfect, unobtainable mold casted by respectability politics. I joined the community in 2017, and I learned the earthen animal definition of Therian. I felt an odd sense of belonging to it, but I was shoved out of it. It wasn't until 2021 that I learned the history of the term. So now I share it with you, in hopes that it helps at least one someone find a piece of their identity that they were missing. And that's it. Now, this slideshow is available for everybody to download from my website. I can find a link for you, hopefully without... I should... I have done this 3 times. You think that I would know better on how to actually do this properly, but no, I'm a hack. Here is a link to my website where I have this essay written. You can click on all the links. You can click on, I have on the sidebar all the places that you can view previous versions of the essay and the presentation. You can download this slideshow. You can download the Google Docs where I originally wrote this. The Google Docs is out of date. My most up to date that you will find is on that website right there. Like, that is the first place I update. Yeah. I love presenting this because it's such good information and it's so important for everybody to know. Sorry, I got distracted. ADHD. Ha! I'm going to go over to panel questions before I get too distracted trying to catch up with with chat. Yes, I'm going to be doing a Q&A for this. I have like 4 people recording it right now, not including myself. You are always welcome to DM me or ping me in a server that we share if you ever have questions about the history of the term. There was so much information that I found online in our history that didn't even make it into the whole essay because I was so focused narrowly on how the definition changed that it was too much to put in. Over the years, have you noticed any trends about the Therian terminology changing as you've presented over the years? Yes. Ever since the first year that it was presented in 2021, I have seen a shift from the exclusive definition to the inclusive definition, and it is amazing. And every single person and creature who joins the panel and read and takes that information and brings it to the people who have not yet seen the presentation are all a part of history. You all are making it possible for this information to make it to people. On top of that, I welcome anyone who wants to dispel misinformation to grab the link to my essay on my website and use it to show exclusionists. Because whilst there are some people will never be able to change their mind, some people will only change their mind if they see these sources. Will see that there has been the work looked at and done to say, oh wait, actually, that's not what we knew. Let me throw my website also in panel questions. That way it's easier to find for everybody. Yes, I love the bubbles so much. They make me very happy. So I, as an Eastern dragon, I don't have to see how earthen I am. Can I call myself a Therian because I am dragon? I'm no human. I am a dragon with dragon instincts, urges, feelings, and whatnot. Does that make me Therian? Absolutely. Let me see if I can find the screenshot that I recently found when someone was doing the whole earthen animal thing to, I think, Dino. Dino was actually fighting someone about this. And it made me curious. So I went back to the original coining thread of where the word Therian was originally used on alt horror werewolves. And they look a little weird because of how Usenet was acquired by Yahoo, which then was acquired by that specific function of Yahoo was then acquired by Google. It looks very odd and can be hard to read. Where did I find this? Here it is. How can I show? I'm just gonna paste this into panel question. No, maybe not panel questions. Yeah, because it's slower. So I will read this to everybody, so you don't have to go over there. But I do want to share this with you. Everything that is blocked out is people's official name, like legal names. I did not want that to be out there in the world as a screenshot. You can see everything uncovered on I think it's number 5, my citation number 5. So perhaps the word like lycanthropy is a bit confusing at this point. Anyone besides me heard the term therianthropy, which is a more general term for lycanthropy. The reply says, I have used the term therianthropic to describe my spirits, as lycanthropy is quite specific. My wolves are lycanthropic, but their shifting is extremely variable. As I see it, therianthropy applies to any human animal form, regardless of history, powers, or other attributes. I feel like that's very damning. And to exclusionists, really. I only found this recently, like, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. I did not have the time to integrate that into the essay. I think I'm going to after the convention, because this is so huge, so important. It is on the original therianthropy thread. Let's see. There's a lot of questions. Do you think that the alter-human community as a whole needs a terminology overhaul list? Not necessarily. Now, part of the issue here is that I'm going to focus on Therian, because that is why I'm here. That one needs an update, because it has been excluded to hell, and is incredibly unhelpful to anybody who has an animal aspect to them. Some things might be useful, like, I even need to edit some of my, definition quotes, because they include the identifies as non-physically, whereas in recent years, we have updated this understanding that you can be physically non-human. And I think that's where we could also use some updates, but I don't think overall everything needs to be updated. Just for a couple of things that we've come to learn better about how people experience being alter or non-human. How do we discuss definitions, since I've heard about issues with gatekeeping or toxicity in the community? I would personally, I'm bad personally at confrontation. I don't like it. My personal way of handling it is to just link my essay and let them do the reading, and if they don't want to do the reading, that's on them. I would refer you to Ronnie, who is really good at having those hard discussions. It says that it learned how to do that by taking conflict management, I think is what it's called. But basically in college, it took a class on how to have hard conversations and like debates with people, right? Or if you're in a debate club, my spouse is really good at debate kind of stuff because they're in debate club. That's the kind of stuff that I would suggest if you want to go into learning how to correct people, would be a good way to look into how to do it. There is also, part of it is remembering that there are going to be people and creatures you cannot change their minds. They're just not in the right mindset of it to accept new information. And that's not on you. And sometimes not even on them. They're just not in the right place. So sometimes it just can't be helped. The best thing you can do in that situation is instead to present the correct information and spread the correct information so that the correct information is out there for others to find. That's kind of why people debate people who are like that, not to try and change the person's mind, but to show to others that there is an alternative to that line of thought. Are there any particularly interesting facts or events you want to include in the presentation that didn't quite make the cut? Oh, I wish you had asked me this 3 years ago. Not for any bad reason, but more because I did all the research like 3 years ago, and I kind of lost all of the fun tidbits. If you go back to my presentation from 2021, I probably talk about some of them because I was more excited. It was more fresh in my mind. I was able to remember it, stuff like that. I know that there was a lot of really fun stuff, but I can say for certain, like, more as a warning, but also like a fun trip down memory lane. If you want to do what I did and go into the Internet Archive and learn more of our history from primary sources, please be very careful if you are photosensitive, because there was a very infamous way of creating websites back in the day that made it very hard for certain people to read and look at. I thought it was funny as hell because I remember those types of websites. I don't miss them because I was there and I remember those types of websites, I knew to be careful and I knew what I was getting into. So that's why I want to extend it to everybody. If you want to do this, please be careful. What are your thoughts on the terms Theriomythic and Paleotherian? I love them. I made my own Therian term that some of you may have heard before. It's Therian. I created I can't say I created it because I just smashed two words together, but I coined Therian shortly after learning about Therian not meaning earth and animal, out of sheer and unadulterated spite. And it's helped a lot of people. There are people who use Therian and that's their term for how they experience being a Therian. These are words that should exist because people like them, but also because it helps you find specific other individuals and other people and creatures, right? Theriomythic and Paleotherian, for those who aren't aware, were coined thereabouts after the branch happened in our history where exclusions started to use earth and animal only. It was kind of like to take the power back, and people have been using it ever since. So I would never want to take that away from them. And I do encourage anybody who resonates with it to use it because they're great words. And I think they have a place, even if they do still fall under Therian. As a newly discovered alterhuman, I have been having a hard time figuring out what it means to be Therian. There are so many voices in so many places saying exactly what a Therian is and isn't. It makes it really difficult to understand my own identity. What would you say to someone like me trying to figure out if they fit in and belong here? Question yourself. Do you feel like an animal? Do you feel non-human instincts? Do you feel I come back to, do you feel like an animal? Um, absolutely. Please use it. Even if, so the first year that I presented this, a lot of people were starting to try it on. And that was a lot of individuals who were like, an alien from the movie Alien, right? They have considered themselves Therians now because they are animalistic, even though they are something else. Um, I love the fact that it is starting to catch on. I just love that because it's so useful. Would you consider non-flesh, non-animalistic, sapient animal shape kintypes Therian? I was made of light shift to such forms. I technically have animal instincts related to these forms, but I consider them on par with human instincts. In my case, this includes mythical animals. I would still believe it, or I would still label it as Therian if you have animal instincts, if the term makes you comfortable. Absolutely, you can use it. In this case, you could use theriomythic very easily if you enjoy that word. I'm not here to label anybody. I'm just here to help you. Where would we draw the line between therianthropy and otherkinity then? What can I tell people who want to discuss that with me? So, for anybody who doesn't know our community's history, the Therian community, as I described today, came up by itself. But so did the otherkin community. They were two separate yet equally similar communities with equally similar experiences, to the point that when they encountered each other, they meshed together very well. But there were some individuals who did not like the melding, even though everything felt very similar. It really depends on what word is the most comfortable to who's using it, or who identifies more with which community. We have this bad habit of wanting to make boxes when really everything is more like a Venn diagram. And therianthropy and otherkinity are very much a Venn diagram. We experience the same things. We have the same ways to describe shifts, mental shifts, phantom shifts, instincts, There's not so much a line as there is like a fade. They fade into each other very well, to the point that someone who ostensibly could consider themselves a Therian is calls himself otherkin, and vice versa. I don't really have any good ways to like box things, because again, it's not a box, and I know a lot of people see it as a box, which is supremely unhelpful. But I hope that helps answer that question. Not really a question about the panel, but I'm curious, would I have permission to use the slideshow, link it? Absolutely, please do. Absolutely, please do. Please, please, please. I would love you to do that. One of the biggest reasons that this whole presentation and essay exists is because the early internet shared everything. There was links to that I found that our historians didn't have, because I followed partnerships and citation links to other websites because they hosted essays on other people's websites, and so on and so forth. It would never happen without the community aspect of sharing. So please, please, please put my stuff on your website, with credit, of course, so they can find me, which then they can find my web rings, which they can find my library of links to other people. We're a community. We should have the community out there so that we can find each other. It's interesting that the history can be seen as a movement toward establishing something bold and new, followed by a movement toward restriction and exclusion. From your research, have you seen how best that restrictive movement was fought back against? How should, in your opinion, communities best find a balance between rule setting and free expression? This is such a hard topic. And I feel like the best way is really to talk. Really, like, let me go to example of when we started to dispel the belief that alter humanity could only be involuntary, or Therian and other can only be involuntary. We had a lot of discussions, and a lot of people and creatures realized there doesn't need to be an exclusion here, because our words, our experiences, our terminology, and so forth are all so similar. It's better to have one big term than exclusatory little terms, right? Not saying that microlabels are bad. In the whole of it, it's better to be inclusive, is what I'm trying to say. Reading a question. So, all right. I would like to. We can bring that up in another, just because I think I booked an hour. I don't know if there's anything after me, because I will, if there's not, I'll continue to. Okay, there is. I will continue to answer questions for anybody who wants to stick around. But I think that is easier for us to kind of do off camera, because that is a very, very good discussion. And I really do want to have that. For summarization, for myself, if someone asked you the definition of Therian, what is the exact answer that you would give them? Let me pull up my website, because I recently made a handwritten dictionary. So let me go to Therian. My definition for Therian or Therianthrope is an alter-human who identifies as an animal or experiences animality. And I think that is such a nice, succinct way that is very inclusive to everybody. I found Therian to be a better label to me than Otherkin, despite looking like my profile pic. The profile pic looks like, I'm going to assume, a anthro dragon, bat dragon. I'm so sorry if I'm not seeing this correctly. Just because there's no record of me doesn't mean I'm any less real. Does Therian fit in the context of what you're talking about? Absolutely. If you feel that you have animal traits, you identify as an animal, I feel you fit into Therian. Among the earth and animal trend, identities such as fictionkin, otherkin, etc. were very heavily judged. Absolutely. Grilled and scrutinized against, at least in the amiibo. Absolutely. Until maybe 2019, 2020. Do you think this was so heavily guarded because of fear of judgment in a niche community, or perhaps other reasons? So here's a really fun, not so fun thing that I found in our research. And that is, the fictionkin community was extremely poorly received in the early days. Like, if you ever want to read the field guide to Otherkin yourself and your fictionkin, I want you to be so very careful and go in when you are in a very stable mindset, because it made me extremely angry. And that is about all I will say about it, because it was not a nice time to be a fiction kin back then. As for other kin, I feel like there was, as I touched on in the essay slideshow, other kin were seen by Therians to be less realistic because they were mythical creatures, by their definition. So there was something less believable about them. Like, oh, you believe you're something over there that's not real. You can't be that kind of thing. Grilling and being was such a bad time for the community because it was taken too seriously. I know that a lot of people have mentioned in the past that the act of grilling is a good idea for some people. However, it's not good for everybody. And the way that some grillers were, it wasn't good. I see a similar question. The panel chat has been talking about the whole grilling that used to be done. It was often considered a form of keeping the community safe, but nowadays many view it as an old form of gatekeeping. For example, it was common for Therians to hear wolves don't have X trait in real life, or you need to have shifts. Why do you think things were so strict within a community that's been around for so long? Again, it goes back to respectability politics, I believe. It really comes down to, I have to bring this up because it was so recent. The person who, I found the screenshot that I shared a little bit ago, argued that a Therian the animal that they were, if they were a past life Therian, who they only subscribed to it being past life, could not have had a name. The individual could not, have the name Fido. Because them remembering it was too unrealistic. I'm just gonna let that sink in. Because we laughed about it for about 2 hours. I also think that grilling was a holdover, wanted to make sure that people adhered to the expectations of previous generations of otherkin or Therians. My bad. Oh my god. You need to have shifts is a very Therian thing to believe. I unfortunately was not. I was around during the tail end of the grilling era. So unfortunately, I can't say for certain myself why things were so strict. But other than making sure that one followed such a tight expectation is the only reason I can think of that grilling got so awful. Do you have any comments on TikTok Therians leaning toward Earthen definition of Therian? A side question, could it be caused from any malicious intent similar to the first change in definition? Honestly, I think it's just because these individuals have only heard the Earthen definition, or they had the same type of, this is what it means. If you don't think this, you're not a Therian. Because that is something that me and some others have seen, that people are too afraid to identify as a Therian because the community they have found themselves in makes them be a certain type of Therian, or they're not a Therian, if I can put it that way. That being said, I have had some interaction with some inclusionists who are on TikTok and are trying to combat the misinformation. If that's your thing, if you like TikTok and you want to make videos, and you want to make videos presenting the correct information, all the power to you. You are welcome to use anything from my essay for more power toward it. Because that's doing the good work. It really is. There's some very misinformed kids on there, and I think that they need good role models, if I can put it that way. I've always thought the Therian and Otherkin are the same, and which one you use is up to you. It's pretty much true. There is a lot of community history between the two, and I hope that I was able to give a little bit of a look inside the Therian side. Unfortunately, I have not researched much into the Otherkin side, so I can't say much more about it. Other than go check out House of Chimera's Therian timeline and Orion Scribner's Otherkin timeline if you're at all interested, because it is a great read. And kudos to both of them. I referenced those two documents so much for this writing that I honestly, half of my citation should be them. Will the slideshow be posted in a channel? If you follow my website link, I did link it within the panel questions channel. You will always be able to find my slideshow because it is downloadable from my website. Do you find similarities between misconstruction of the definition of a theory and other closely related terms such as other linkers or flickers? I do find similarities, but I don't think it's for the same reasons. I think that there is, especially with other linkers and flickers, they're so underutilized that it can be kind of easy to game of telephone it. Like, somebody misheard the definition at one time and takes that as gospel. It could be the same way with Therian. It could have been all a bad game of telephone. I was not able to find any examples to say yes or no on that, but it could be. Because I'm going to plug again, if you want, that's a bad way of saying it. If you are able to, please make a website. Throw anything related to non-humanity, alter humanity on your website. It doesn't have to look super pretty. It can look as awful and eye-searing as to your heart's content. This essay would not exist without even the stupid, pitiless little crap being put on someone's website. And I mean that so affectionately, because so many people believe that certain thoughts or experiences are too small to document. But it wasn't but it was those types of things that led me to some of these pages. Like, which one is it? Glendarry. I never heard of this guy before, and like none of his other pages were saved on archive. But this was so important to this research. It's a linchpin. And that's important. Every single individual who made a website and had it archived is a part of history today. Looking at it, how this definition changed. You will never know how important your information is until it's used, right? So why not put everything out there? And I absolutely suggest that you do it, because this would not have been possible without it. Are humans Therian, or are not all non-humans Therian? From the way you described it, since humans have similar instincts to other animals. That is, again, one of those, there's really no line. It's kind of a fade. Like, it's hard to put a line on it because there is so much overlap. And while a lot of the description, the definitions will say non-human animal, there's a lot of human instincts and habits that are very similar to animals. And if you feel like your human experience is more animal than your typical human, I don't see why you can't use it. I'm not your boss. I'm not your dad. um, I do believe there is supposed to be a panel that is about that, though. So I would check that one out. I think it's the Anthro something something. I'm not going to look it up because I'm going to mispronounce it. Do animal-human hybrids count as Therian? I would. If you feel like your animal part of the hybrid is strong and you have those instincts and Therian resonates with you, absolutely go right ahead. Um, do. Do you think it would be better to just try and make my own representation in other kin spaces, or to mostly interact with Therians and post it in the Therian tag? So let me read the whole from this because this is a very fascinating, and I've thought about this myself. I'm Zombiekin, and I feel a bit envious of Therian culture. Amongst other personal reasons, in my experience, most zombie-related alter non-human content feels like it's focused on aesthetics, as opposed to, say, Lycanthropes or Wolves, where you have really popular blogs who actually have serious discussions. I feel more connected to the concept of otherkin rather than Therianthropy, but I vibe with Therians more. Do you think it would be better to just try to make my own representation in otherkin spaces, or to interact mostly with Therians and post in Therian tags instead? Do what you want forever is like, I think our motto of was it Centaurus Festival or was it last other con? I can't remember. Do what you want forever, because the experiences are you describing the experiences is what's going to make the definition, if I can put it that way. Because it's so niche, like, you're the only one who can understand you. Cross-posting and trying to find others who feel similar, there could be like 50 other individuals who feel similar to you, and they would never know that they're not they have other people out there like them without your writings. It's like, how many of us found the other human community or the older human community and didn't have words for it before, but now they do, right? So I think you should just do whatever you want forever. That's the best that I can give you, because only you can define your experiences. And my personal opinion is be the change you want to see in the world. Absolutely, yep. I've had folks get mad at me for having fox shifts instead of normal coyote shifts. Is it weird that folks are biased on certain stereotypes? I feel like we are all Therians. Shouldn't we just support each other instead of judging? Absolutely. Absolutely. And like, I feel like some people forget that there is the concept of a cameo shift. Do people not remember that shift anymore? Like, you can have shifts that aren't of your kin types. You can do what you want forever. I'm gonna make that the new I'm gonna make that the new catchphrase for the con. Do what you want forever. I noticed there's another predominant idea where Therian is specifically a wild animal. I even saw it in a few definitions Therian people gave, and I see it reflected a lot in the contents by and for. Absolutely. I hate that there is an expectation that Therian is supposed to be wild. I love that so many people are bringing these up because I literally just made a post about this on Tumblr. And let me go and get it because I think it's also very... Where the hell is it? Where did I put it? Scrolling. There we are. I found it. Copy link. I'm going to throw this into chat. Because, yes, there is this very frustrating idea that people want to distance themselves so much from being human in order to feel Therian that it's not a Therian experience to be domesticated. Which is very unfortunate because there's... What is the first animal that you can think of? A dog or a cat, right? Why do we think of a dog or a cat first? Because humans have spent millennia around these animals. So why should Therians only be wild? And I, as a captive dinosaur, I wasn't domesticated, but I kind of was. It makes it very funny for me to think about the weirdly domesticated, not domestic animal, right? And yet so many people are like, oh, do you just want to go run through the fields and enter the forest? And especially, like, here's my other gripe with it. All of them are running into the forest. Not everywhere has forests. Stop being North American centric. Not at anybody here, but just like in general, when I hear that kind of thing, it's like, stop being North American centric. Do you think it's a generally good shift to use Alterhuman as a more broad encompassing labels for those who feel they don't like the constrictions placed on others, or do you feel it has constrictions placed as well? Ultimately, Alterhuman is the largest umbrella that we have and possibly can have. There are some good points, especially about how there are people and creatures who don't like using Alterhuman because it has the word human in it. But there's a lot of discussions, and not specifically for something to be focused on in this panel, but you need to be able to describe versus something. And unfortunately, we're kind of on a certain type of hardware in this life. And that's kind of where Alterhuman comes in. It's an alternative to assuming that hardware describes what you are inside. That's the best way that I can go about describing that. Also curious about domestic and therianthropy. I would love if the domesticated Therians who have memories or noemata, I can't say that word correctly, I only know how it's written, bring up a thread or something on the Alterhuman channel, because I would love to talk about it more, being a non-conventionally domesticated animal. So for anybody who isn't aware of what the term grilling is, it is a old practice from the mid-aughts, the early to mid-aughts. Well, no, tens, not the aughts. I don't know, was it in the aughts? Somebody who's been around longer than me, tell me if it was in the aughts. Where somebody would be very, almost viciously asked questions about their kin type, how they experience it, so on and so forth. It got a really bad rap because it was used so often to exclude rather than help somebody think about how they experience themselves. Grilling, to my memory, was mainly in the early mid-2000s. Okay. I came in the late aughts, and I know that there was still grilling culture, but it was dying when I joined. So, thank you. I'm unfortunately not as familiar with it as I should be. But that's the basics of grilling. Somebody who has been grilled or was from that era will know better than I will. In your definition of Therian, is someone who identifies as an animal, or is it someone who identifies as an animal or experiences animality? Does it mean that you are not obligated to identify as a specific species? Okay, these are multiple questions. All right, so the first one is someone who identifies as an animal or experiences. Up to you. What's the most inclusive way that you could word it? That's my word. That's my description. Because I would rather be inclusive than exclusive. I want people to find a community in being, right? So if it's more inclusive to say, and it's actually more inclusive to say and or rather than or and. Does it mean that you are not obligated to identify as a species specific of non-human animal in order to call yourself Therian? Absolutely. If you feel like you are a animal but you don't know what that animal is, or you don't care to know, absolutely. Some people use non-human, others will use Therian. Absolutely, go right ahead. Perfect. Amazing. Still pretty new to the community, and as much as I heard people and beings say that identification is the only main basic part of being a Therian. That, without the identity part, is not therianthropy, but it makes me feel confused. Personally, I feel animalistic, and I see myself as much more animalistic than other humans. But there's obviously something going on, but I don't see myself as any specific non-human animal. What it feels wrong to call myself a Therian without having. Yep. Definitely go ahead and use it. There is so early on in the community, and I mentioned it in the slideshow / essay, where there was a prevailing understanding that people who were Therian exhibited shifts. And that's why it's such a huge part of the community today, is because shifts are different to your normal. This isn't your question, but I wanted to point this out because it brought up a very good point. That has been moved away from in recent years, because just as we've moved away from involuntary definition, not everybody has shifts. And so it's very isolating to say that you can't be such and such if you don't have shifts. We would rather be inclusive than exclusive. So the fact that Therians feel like they shift more is a coincidence, not a causation. Even though that's kind of how the community feels like it started. However, early, like 1994, 1996, something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. Actually, I might have a citation. Actually. Hold on, let me go to it. Someone in... Here it is, Lion Templin. What year was this? Oh, this is... I'm gonna have to fix that. Oh, wait, no, I'm on the right page. I'm not gonna look for it because it's a huge conglomeration. I didn't realize that was a huge conglomeration that I linked. Lion Templin, here on the screen, coined in either 1994 or 1996. I can't remember the exact one. Therianthropy. For those who are not aware of what it is, Therianthropy is where you do not experience shifts. That's how huge shifting was to the community. That someone almost immediately after Therianthropy was coined, made a term counter to it because it needed to be made. So the same can go for without identifying as. Like, typically we talk a lot about identifying as, but there is also a place in the community for experiencing shifts, but perhaps not feeling like something. I don't know if it's, I guess you can put it under therianthropy. It's a very interesting, because I haven't seen it very often. That'd be very interesting to read essays from. I really would like that. What are your thoughts on coping links versus involuntary therianthropy? Is there a meaningful difference in the grand scheme of things? Absolutely not. Because as we had this big discussion in the community, it's over the last couple of years, it's very possible to make an involuntary identification through a voluntary identification. There is something to be said about how certain people want resources and spaces where people understand each other, mainly understand how involuntary feels versus how voluntary feels. I think that's where it ends. There's not really a meaningful difference between that other than needing a certain type of support system. And I feel like that's very easy to make without alienating anybody. Alright, so the next panel is approximately in 30 minutes. Good to know. I know folks who are fiction Therians don't identify as animals, but see their species as animals. Any last questions? Because otherwise, then I think I've caught up. If I missed something, you are more than welcome to ping me. You're more than welcome to DM me. And that goes for anything outside of today. If you have a question about the history, if you have a question about legitimacy, someone, even though, like, if you ask me about legitimacy, I'm like, do what you want forever. I will be here. Feel free to ask me questions. Absolutely. Couple people typing. I just want to make sure that they're not questions. Yes, you can absolutely DM me. Absolutely perfect. Can I repeat the panel one more time? If I had time. If I had the space for it. No, before I go, make a Neocities. Make a blog that's public. Share your essays, share your experiences, even if it's, I had a claw shift today. You never know when it's going to be important. Even if it feels piddly, dumb, stupid, no one's gonna read it, do it. Because you never know. And someone wants to read it. I experienced teeth shifts, absolutely. Dinosaur teeth are the best. Yes, my DMs are open. So, do what you want forever. If you like being if you feel like you're a Therian, you're a Therian. Have a nice evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. Don't forget, you're always welcome to use the essay as ammo versus exclusionists. Have a good con, y'all.